Hi everyone, welcome to the first lesson for Maths application. So today we'll be looking at the first topic, which is bivariate data analysis. Alright, so when you look at the index here, so 3.1, so 3 means that unit 3, and then 1 is topic 1. So meaning that you have 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and then after that we move into unit 4, then 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. Okay, so that's the idea of it. Alright, so for this topic, it is a lot to deal with statistics. So we'll be learning what is that meant by bivariate data, then how do we actually carry out the analysis to analyze the data, and then how do you interpret and communicate the result. Alright, so that's the idea for this chapter. So for the first session, we'll be having two videos. So this is the first video which I am going to introduce you or we try to do some recap on the statistical investigation process that you have been learning before. All right, and we also make some recap for what is that meant by data, and then what is the univariate data analysis that we have in statistics. All right, so those are not really included in your syllabus, but then it will be good for you to provide you a background information before we move on. All right. Then after that, for the second lesson, we are going to focus in the bivariate data. All right. So let's start with the lesson here. All right, so I hope that by this time you have printed out your materials. So no matter it is in hard copy or is a soft copy in your pad or in your laptop, so make sure that when you are watching the video, so you are actually putting in the notes together with me. So but not just looking at the screen and after that just watching and listen to it. All right, so I hope that you can try to keep a copy for your reference so it's good for your future revision. All right, so the first thing that we're going to look at is data. So we know that data is basically the collected information. All right. So when we collect data, so normally they are variable. So meaning that this is like the information that we are actually looking for. So a variable can be any characteristic, number, quantity that normally can be either observed, counted, or measured. All right, so later I'll be giving you some example of the variable that we have. All right, so yeah, so there are two types of data that we have. So the first one is what we call as categorical. All right, so yeah, by looking at the name, then you know that this is basically the type of data or the variable that we are actually looking for is the variable that can be grouped in categories. So for example, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite pen? What's your favorite singer? Or even things like what's your eye color and so on. All right. So under categorical, to look into it in a much more detail, so there are actually two types of data under categorical. The first one is called as nominal. All right, so nominal categorical data is basically observation that has no order. So for example, one of the example that I mentioned just now is like the favorite color. So which means that we wouldn't say that either that like blue color is better than red color or like pink color is better than green color and so on. All right. So that's basically a variable that we can group into categories, but there is no specific order for your data. Okay, for your variable as if like your like the color that you have. Okay, then the second type that we have is the ordinal categorical data. So for ordinal, it's also an observation that can be observed and can be grouped into categories, but then the order is actually matters here. So for example, things like movie rating. So if let's say is either like very interesting, so, and then I don't like it, or like yeah, it's totally boring and so on. So you can see that you can eventually group order them. So for example, like 5 star, 4 star, 3 star, 2 star, 1 star. So you can see there's a sequence in the observation, but it's not by counting or it's not by measurement. All right, so I hope that I can understand the idea. Or it can also be how much are you looking forward to go back to college? Yeah. So it's like looking forward and then it's like so, or it's like you are not looking forward. Okay. So which means it's an observation that can be ordered in such a way. All right, then after that, the second one that we have, so categorical is basically the characteristic that we observe. Then for the second type is numerical. So by looking at this word, then you know that is to deal with number. All right, so numerical data is basically the data that can be counted or measured. All right, so we have two types numerical data as well. The first one is the discrete numerical data. Then the second one is continuous numerical data. Okay, so what's the difference between them? So discrete is about a set of distinct values, so usually involve counting. So things like number of cars in the road, number of students in the class, so number of pens that you have. Yeah, so stuff like that. So meaning that normally the process involve things like counting. Okay, so and just to be aware that, for example, when you try to calculate, when you try to do counting, so like number of cars, number of people, so you shouldn't have things like 0.1 or 0.5%, things like that. All right, so normally this will be a distinct value, but also to bear in mind that it will not be always in whole number. So one good example will be, for example, money. So money is actually under discrete value. So although it's not like the whole number that you have, because sometimes you'll have 50 cent, 5 cent, and so on, right? But then we actually reduce counting. So we cannot, I mean, there's a limit for the decimal places that you can put in money. So for example, the smallest number that you have is like 1 cent. So you couldn't actually have 0.00005 cent. You get what I mean? Or like you don't even have like 0.5 cent. So that's the idea. Okay, then the second one is continuous. So continuous is to deal with interval or a range. So normally it will involve measurement. So things that's like very close to us would be like the height or like the weight. Okay, so for example, you can see that someone has a weight of 41.34568. Yeah, so no matter how many decimal place that you want, so you can definitely get it with like a much more accurate tool that you try to use to measure it, right? So the more decimal places that you have, meaning that the more accuracy is your data. So normally for continuous data, you'll be able to actually specify it in a way like, for example, 40 to 45 kg, then 46, uh, 45 to 50 kg, 50 kg to 55 kg, and so on. All right, so that's the idea. So I hope that you can see this. So yeah, in this chapter, we'll be looking at the two type of data as well, the categorical and the numerical data for bivariate data. Okay, so later when we move on to the second lesson, then you'll be able to look at it in a much clearer way. Okay, so now let's try to look at this statistic investigation process. All right, so yeah, we know that basically what we are doing in this chapter is statistic. So for the investigation process is just a cyclical process. Okay, so it's always in a cycle. So why do we actually carry out statistical process is actually for us to solve a real world problem. So it means that you have a problem that you want to solve. So how are you going to collect data? How are you going to analyze the data and then to get the outcome that you want? Okay, so why do we do so? It's actually to solve a problem. All right, so this is one of the description of the investigation process that provided in your syllabus. Okay, so the first thing that we always try to do is there is a problem, right? So because there's a problem, so that's why we want to solve it. So the first step that we have is to clarify the problem. So to understand that what's the problem that we want to solve. Then after that, we try to formulate the question. So meaning we try to design a set of questions so that we can actually uh, we can actually collect the data, then analyze it, and after that, solve the question. Okay, like for example, okay, let's do an interesting one. So, Miso is the best lecturer in MCKL. So when you try to say that, yeah, so how do you want to convince others to actually believe in you? All right, so yeah, that's the idea. So meaning now maybe your problem is I want to see whether Miso is the best lecturer in MCKL or not. Okay, so the question that you try to formulate is that maybe you want to ask the students how much time that you spend in watching Miss O's video, then how much you can understand in Miss O lesson. Okay, so yeah, so stuff like that. All right. Then after you actually formulate the question, then you need to find the related audience, right? Then after that, you want to collect the data. Okay, so meaning you try to uh, just identify who's your target of your investigation. Then after that, you try to collect the data from them. All right. So after you collect the data, you have a lot of like even numbers or like observation. Then what do we need to do is to analyze the data. So from the data, then I'll be looking at things like some measurements, or meaning some of the mean, mode, and the statistic that we'll be looking at later. Okay, so after we analyze the data, then we need to interpret the data. So analyze data is basically to giving you the analysis of the data. So interpreting data is actually try to find the meaning in the analysis. All right. So meaning that what can we get from the analysis? So that's the interpretation. So when we try to interpret it and we try to communicate the data, so meaning what do you get? So of course, after the whole cycle, as you finish this stage, so whatever outcome that you are getting is actually for you to solve or for you to eventually answer the problem that you have at the initial stage. All right, so I hope that you can understand the whole idea. So now we'll be looking at the univariate data analysis. So yeah, to just do some revision on what you have learned previously. Alright, so univariate data analysis. Okay, so when we talk about univariate data, so this word is actually you can look at it like from two words. So uni meaning like one, and then variate is like variable. So that's why univariate is basically a data with only one variable. So for example, univariate, very good example, univariate data would be when I want to investigate what's the height of the students in max application class. Okay, so when I try to formulate my questions and I want to collect my data, then there will be only one data that I need to collect, which is what is the height. So meaning when you go to each students, then you will ask what's your height, what's your height. Then after that, you want to find out no matter is the average or like the mode of the class and so on. Okay, so this is like univariate data. So which means that you are collecting one type of data, one variable only. So the variable in this case will be height, lah, for example. Okay, so when the data has been collected, so it can always be analyzed. So for univariate data, there are actually two main measures for us to analyze the data. Okay, so yeah, I think that you have actually learned this before in your maths, no matter you are in IGCSE or you are in maths. So if you are from 2008, then you should be learning this with Miss Rachel as well. Okay, so we have the first one is the measure of central tendency. So yeah, measure of central tendency basically tell you about the center of the data. So there are three common way for us to do the statistic. The first one is the mean. So the mean meaning that we want to find what is the average of a set of data. Okay, so which means with the example just now, so when I want to analyze the data of the height of the students, then the first thing that I might use is to find the mean. So I get everyone's height, then after that I try to find the average. Okay, so when someone asks me like, what's the height of the students in max application class? So I wouldn't be able to actually speak of like 41's height, right? Yeah. So meaning that what I will try to do is I'll try to use all these statistics to actually help me to answer the question. So in average, all the students in the class in max application has a height of 160 cm, for example. Okay, so that's the idea. Then the second one is the mode. So mode is the data which occurs most frequent. Okay, or you can write most often. It's just the same thing. So meaning that it's the data with the highest frequency. So for example, if let's say within among 41 students, so there are actually 20 students that has a height of 158 cm. So that's why 150 cm may be having the highest mode compared to other height. So that's why, sorry, having the highest frequency. So meaning is the height that most of the people has it in the class. So that's why it's the mode. Okay. Then the last one is the median. So it's the middle data when we try to order the data set. All right. So which means if let's say I try to collect 41 height, then after that, what's the middle value? And that's my median. Okay, so later we'll be looking at one example here, so don't worry about that. Okay, then after that, the second one, we have measure of spread. So this one basically tell us what how spread out is your data. Okay, so yeah, normally there are three main measure as well. So the first one is the range. So the range is what's the difference between the highest value and also the lowest value in the data. All right, so which means I can get a range like for example, what's the lowest height in the class and what's the highest height in the class. Okay, then when I try to minus them each other, then I can get my range. Okay, so for interquartile range, so the symbol that we try to put, the short name that we try to put is IQR. So it will be equal to Q3 minus Q1. Okay, so Q1 is the lower quartile, so it's the mean of the lower half of the data, and Q3 is the upper quartile, so it's the median of the upper half of the data. So for example, this is the set of data, right? So we know that the middle value will be our median, right? Then after that, in our middle value, so when we try to find the middle value, we actually split the data into two equal parts, right? So for the first equal parts, when I try to find the median again, so this is median. So this is my Q1. Okay, then after that, for the second half, then I have my middle as well. So this is my upper quartile. Okay, so when I use my Q3 to minus my Q1, this is how I get my interquartile range. Okay, so that's the idea. Then after that, the last one we have standard deviation. So it's a measure for the dispersion of a set of data from the mean. So meaning that we want to find how far the data from the mean. Okay, so actually that's a formula for this standard deviation. But in max application, we doesn't really need that because we can use the calculator to help us to actually solve that. Okay, so yeah, so with this idea, then we are going to look at two examples. So the first one is for ungrouped data. So no, yeah, it's like ungrouped data. Then the second one is like group data. Then we're going to look at this idea and then how do we use our calculator to solve it. Okay, so let's try to look at example one. All right, so let's look at example one. So don't worry if let's say you still don't have your calculator. So yeah, you can just try to observe. Then after that, after you got your calculator, then you can try it out by yourself by watching the video again. Okay, or by using the tutorial document that I provide in the team. All right, so yeah. And don't worry for the assignment part, you won't be using your TI Inspire calculator as well. Okay, so now let's try to look at this example. So we are going to solve the A to E by using manually first. Then after that, we are going to use our calculator to help us to check our answer. Okay, so yeah, because I wish that you can understand the idea as well because this is a simple ungrouped data. So for example two, then we can straight away use our calculator to help us to solve. Okay, so for the following data, calculate the mean, the median, the mode, the range, the IQR, and then the standard deviation. So this is a stem and leaf graph. So basically, this is like the unit. Oh, I think they missed out the notes here, but yeah, it's okay. This is like the 10. So 4 meaning 44. Okay, so the group in this data is actually 44. So 4, then I also have 47. Okay, then 52, 56, 58, 61, 63, 65, and also 65. Okay, so these are the data that we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. Okay, all right. So let's start with the mean. Okay, so we know that the mean is basically to find the average for all this value, right? So we can try to use our normal calculator to do this as well. Okay, so we can just plus all the number together and get their sum first. 42, 56, 58, 61, 63, 65, and 65. Okay, so after we get our sum, it's like 511. Then after that, divide by. So just now we have 9 number, right? So you divide by 9, then you'll be able to get the answer. Okay, so it's 56.8. All right, so basically you are getting the total, then you divide by how many value that you have. Okay, so for B, the median. So yeah, if you can recall from the notes that median is like the middle number, right? So we have 9 number here. So for this one, in the content itself, is for you to understand the ideas. So you are not going to actually attempt this type of question in your exam or in the syllabus. Yeah. So it will be a good background information before we move on. So that's the idea. Okay. So for the median, right? So basically, it's just the middle value. So you can just try to look at it like the first one, the last one, the first second, the last second, then the third, and the fourth, and the middle is the fifth one lah. Yeah, so basically you can see there's 4 in the left hand side, 4 in the right hand side. So that's why the median is 58 here. So make sure every time when you want to find the median, so you should actually order all your value in the ascending order, or descending order is actually giving you the same answer as well. Okay, so see the mode. So mode is the value that with the highest frequency, or it actually occur most often. So in this question, you can see that every number actually only occurs once except this number, so which is 65, which occurs 2 times. Okay, so 65 is the mode. So if let's say you have another number that exists for 2 times as well, so which means that you will have 2 mode then. Okay, then after that, D is the range. Yeah, so range is the highest value minus the lowest value. So in this case, the highest value is 65, the lowest is 44, so we just minus them, then we get 21. Okay, then after that, IQR. Yeah, so you remember IQR is by using Q3 minus Q1, right? So in this term, just now we already know that this is the middle. Okay, so which is it's 58 here, right? So this will form our lower half, so meaning it's like the first half. So for this first half, what's the middle? So you have 4 value here, right? So the middle will be 2 for left hand side, 2 for right hand side, so that's why the middle is like here. So for us to find our Q1 is basically we are using 47 plus 52, then we divide by 2 to get the middle value. So similarly for the second half, so I have 4 value here as well, so the middle here will be here. So this is our Q3. Okay, so let's start with Q3 minus Q1. So for our Q3 is 63 plus 65 divided by 2. Okay, and after that, I'll use it to minus my Q1, which is 47 plus 52, and then divide by 2. Okay, so from here, I can get my answer is 14.5. Alright, yeah, you can always try to use your calculator to try them out. Then after that, for the standard deviation, we are going to use our calculator to help us. Okay, so now let's try to look at how do we use our calculator to actually solve this. Okay, so you can have your tutorial, you can just open the document as well. So I try to split it in another document because I doesn't want to you doesn't really need to print out so many paper, right? Yeah, so that's the idea. Okay, so this is the example. Okay, so let's try to look at this one and we try together. So yeah, if let's say you can try to put it on, then it would be good. If not, then it's all right as well. Okay, so our calculator here. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is open a new document with a list and spreadsheet of with a list and spreadsheet page. Okay, so when you try to turn on your calculator, right, how is that? Okay, so let me try to yeah. Okay, so it will be look like this, or if let's say you didn't press anything, then it might look like this. Okay, so if let's say you already off it, then after that you'll be able to actually see this. So what do you need to do is you press menu. Okay, so after you press menu, what do you need to do? Open a new document with a list and spreadsheet. So that's why you are going to add list and spreadsheet. Okay, so if not, then what you can try to do is you can just control, then sorry, yeah, you can just press the document here. Okay, so we are just going to open a new document lah. Then after that, you'll be able to see this list as well. So we are going to add list and spreadsheet. Okay, so let me do it again. So basically you have this page, then you just menu, then add list and spreadsheet. So either you can use your cursor, or in your calculator, you can just press menu, then after that you press 4. Okay, so which means based on the index, you can just press your calculator and you can get it. All right. Okay, so after you have this, then what do we need to do is name column A as data, then we try to add the data into the list. Okay, so now let's try to do this. Okay, so which means we have our list of data, right? So at the column here, we try to name it as data. Okay, so just use your pad here. Is it okay? So I hope that you are following. So just type in data. All right, so after you did that, then you can just move on. Okay, so for your first column, then for the first column here, then you are going to key in all the value that you have here. So for example, 44, then enter 47, then I have 42, sorry, 52, then 56. All right, then move on with 58, 61, 63, 65, and another 65. Okay, so after I have this value, then now I can move on to the next part. Okay, so for the next part, then what we are going to do is use the menu, then press 4. Okay, so we have the value here already, right? Okay, so what you need to do is press menu. Okay, so it'll come out like this. So same thing, you doesn't, so it depends on you whether you want to press this go down, down, down or not. Or eventually you can just look at the number that you press it. So for example, when I press menu, then I want statistic, right? So that's why I can straight away press menu, then number 4. So when I go to number 4, you will just go to number 4. So you do not need to go up and down by using the cursor here. Then after that, stat calculation, then one variable statistic. So that's why is 1. Okay, then it will just come out like this. Then the same thing, I want one variable statistic. Okay, so I think it's my here. So yeah, you can actually see one variable statistic as number 1 as well. So that's why you just for statistic, then stat calculation, then you should be able to see number 1 there. Okay, so 1, then you press one variable statistic. So number of lists is like how many column that you have lah. So for our list, we only have 1, right? So just press OK. Okay, so X1 list, yeah, so we can try to look at this. So select data for the X1 list and then press next until the data is selected. Okay, so meaning that for the X1 list, meaning that which is the column that we actually input our data. So in our data here, just now we already renamed our first column as data, right? So that's why what we try to do is here, we try to just type in data. Okay, so this is an example. After you actually get used to it, you doesn't really need to rename it because A column, so just now before we change it, right, it's actually in A column. So A column is basically mean the A column already. Okay, but it's good that we try to learn how to name it because you will use it when we try to move on for bivariate data analysis later. Okay, so this is for data. Okay, then after that, frequency list is like 1 because it's an ungrouped data. So later we'll be looking at another type of data, which is the group data. Then you'll be able to change the frequency list. So this is 1. So what do we need to do is nothing to change already. So what you can try to do is in your calculator. So you just press tab. Okay, so just tap, 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 tap. Then after that, okay. So press enter. Okay, so everything will just eventually come out like this. So you'll be able to see one variable statistic. Okay, so in this, let me try to explain this a little bit. So what do you have here is you will have this one is your mean. Okay, so you can write down, so or you can just try to check with your answer. Yeah, so you can see the mean here is 56.8. So which means just now our value is correct. Okay, then for this one is the sum of your x. So this symbol means sum. So sum of your x meaning that this is the number that when we try to plus all them together. So just now is 511 divided by 9, right? So this is the total number that we get just now. So this is the number you will use it if let's say you try to use your, so this is the sum of every value square it. So meaning that is the sum of the square data. Okay, we'll actually use it if let's say you try to apply the formula for standard deviation, but in this case, we just use our calculator to solve this, so you can just, ignore this part. Okay, so there are two values that you can see here, which is like very near to each other. So the first one is the standard deviation that we are looking for. This is standard deviation for sample. So this is a standard deviation for population, but normally we are looking at this. But don't worry, as I said, so this is the part for your understanding, and it's your first time for you to try out your calculator. So don't worry if let's say you uh you okay, so meaning that you do not really need to have a very good understanding like between all the term here, but basically to understand what is this term mean. Okay, so basically you wouldn't need this in your real exam as well. Okay, so yeah, but for your knowledge, so this is the sample standard deviation and this is the population. So we have only 9 data, right? So this is like only a very small part of our data. So that's why it's a sample. So population is like a very huge number of data set that we have. Then we will use population instead. Okay, so our answer for the standard deviation will be 7.71. Okay, let's try to look at the next one first. So the n is basically how many data value that you have. So for example, here you have 9 variable, right? So the n is 9 here. So mean x is the minimum number for x. So that's why just now when we try to find the range, right, this is the number that we use to minus. So you can see 44 is the smallest number. Q1x is the lower quartile that we have. So meaning just now when we do the IQR, you remember? So when we try to use our 47 to plus 42 and divide by 2, and this is the answer that we actually got. Okay, 49.5. So Q1 is your lower quartile lah. Then median, yeah, so you can see the median is the middle number provided here. Q3 is this number that we use 63 plus 65 to divide by 2, right? So this is how we get Q3 just now. Then, meaning that for you to get your IQR is basically just using 64 to minus 49.5, and this is how we get our IQR just now. So the max is the maximum number lah. So for the last one, you wouldn't need this. All right, so yeah, that's the idea for what you can actually get it from your calculator. Okay, so basically for the calculation that you have in statistic is a lot of things to deal with calculator rather than manually. So as we move along, when you try to look at the statistic part for for the bivariate data, for the numerical part is a lot to deal with your calculator as well. Okay, so yeah, that's why a calculator is very important. Especially in your exam and so on. Okay, so let's try to just write down our answer 7.71. So our standard deviation here is, yeah, let me just write down as E lah. So it's 7.71. Okay, so I hope that you can roughly get the idea. So now let's move on to example 2. Alright, so for example 2, so this is a group data. So the difference is just that group data is like the data that they have actually organized it and put it in a table. So this will be very helpful if you have like more than like 10, like you have a lot of data set. So that's why it's easier for you to, instead of writing like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, then you have 11, 2. So that's why they try to group it in a frequency table that they state to you that that is 5, 1, that's 11, 2, that's 4, 3, that's 3, 4, that's 7, 5, and so on. Okay, so this is the data of a score here. All right, so which mean okay, as you can see, right, you have like something like 2 column, but don't be confused with this is not a bivariate data, so meaning that it's still univariate because the only variable that you are having is actually the score. So this is like frequency, like how many people, how many how many observation that you realize is having a score of 1. Okay, so that's the idea. So meaning that when you try to carry out this investigation, right, it's still going to be like when I try to meet all the people, then I try to ask what's your score. So these people give me 1, then that people give me 3, and so on. Then I try to just summarize the data in this table. So that's why this is also one variable involved only, so which is the score. So frequency tells us that how many people is having 1, how many people is having 2, and so on. All right. Okay, so now we'll be just using our calculator to straight away solve it. You wouldn't really need to know the part for like formula and so on, but you'll realize that for mode we can't actually use our calculator, yeah, because based on the calculator working just now, you should realize that there's no mode inside, so you need to identify the mode by yourself. Okay, so let me just write down this first. So mode, then D we have range. Okay, so there are some parts here actually, if you take additional mathematics before, then you should be quite familiar with it and you should be actually calculate it. But yeah, so what's important here is to see look at how our calculator to help us to do all this. Okay, so now let's try to start with our calculator. So same thing, you can open your, I mean, what's that, your tutorial as well. So if let's say you want to have one reference beside, then after that we try to go through it together. Then yeah, if not, then you just try to look at this one, then we try to do it together also can. Okay. So after you have this, right, if let's say you want to just delete it, then what you can try to do is you just open a new page. So if not, then what you can do is just move over to the other side. Then you try to use a new column to do here. So for example, that's like D and E. So you just try to write like E, F. Yeah, you can move whatever like whenever far that you want lah. So basically, so if not, then what you can try to do is to just try to go out. Then after that, you open a new page. So if let's say you want to open a new dot, then what you can try to do is, so either you want to add a page or either you open a new dot. So open a new dot, then you just press dot. Then after that file, then you just either you want to save or not. So if you doesn't want to save, then just no. After that, you just add a list and spreadsheet again. Okay, so yeah, let's try to add a new one. So we have add list and spreadsheet. Okay, so when we are here, then the same thing. So we can try to name our column first. So in this question is score and frequency, right? So for A, let's try to just type in score. Okay, then after that you can press tab. Okay, then we can just type in frequency like FREQ, then it's fine already. Okay, it's for you to know that what's the column that you actually put in. Okay, so after you did this, then now we can try to just key in our value here. So when score is 1, the frequency is 5. Okay, then after that, when our score is 2, then the frequency is 11. Then after that, 3, then 4. Yeah, you can always play around your calculator like whether you want to press tab or you want to press enter. So those are all can be accepted. So for example, when I try to press this, then either I can do 4, tab, then 3, then enter, go down. Okay, or the other case that I can, oops, sorry, is 3, then go down. Or the other thing that is I can just use my left and right lah. Okay, so which means for this, then what I can try to do is 5. Then after that, I just go to my left hand side. Oh, I don't think you can do this, so just tap. Okay, then after that, 7, I think go down. Yeah, go down you can. Then after that, go to your left hand side, then 6, tap, and then 2. Okay, so that's the idea. So after we have key in the value, so you will see the process is just the same because this is a one variate, is a unit variate data as well. So what we need to do is we try to repeat the steps that we have done just now. So stat calculation, then one variable statistic. Okay, so yeah, so meaning that menu, then for statistic, stat calculation, then you can see one variable statistic, so you just press 1. Okay, so number of lists is like how many variable that you have here. So although you have 2 column here, but the variable that you have is only in one list, right? So that's why number of lists is 1. Then you just okay. Okay, so either you can just press enter in your calculator. So X1 list meaning okay, so you remember just now they are asking like how many lists that you have, right? So this is the list that is your variable. So in this case, score is your variable, right? So that's why you just key in score. Okay, then after that you tab. So in this question, so just now it's a ungrouped data, so that's why the frequency is all 1. So meaning when you have like 1 times of 44, then that's just the 1 time. So in this case, we have like more than that, right? Because we have frequency, so that's why the frequency in this case will be your frequency lah. So FREQ. So we don't have category, just tap. Okay, so this is the first result column. So first result column is where you want your result to exist. So just now we didn't change this, right? So that's why the result actually come up in the B column. Okay, so now since we already have the B column, which is the frequency just now, so that's why it's good that we try to just change it to C column. Okay, so what you can try to do is just press C. Or okay, let's try to put D, then you can see the difference, right? So D, then just key in this one. All right, oops, I'm sorry. So I think you need to control. Okay, control, then press this one, then you should be able to get this. So just tap, okay, go to tab, then after that press OK. Okay, so you are here just now, so tap and then enter. So now you when you look at this, right, you can see now the result coming out in the column of D. Okay, so I mean, although you can just play around, you want to play Z and so on, you want to I mean place it like at a very far location, but I mean in your real case you doesn't want to do that lah, because you'll use a lot of time to actually go to the right hand side. Okay, but yeah, that's the idea. So this is the value that we get, so meaning that this is our answer lah. Just write down our answer here. So you have 3.0625, then the answer, this is the standard deviation, so the number and so on. Okay, so let's try to put them in one by one. Okay, so let's start from the mean first. So we have our mean here is 3.06. Okay, all right, then after that we have this is the total, right? Yeah, so which means if let's say you want to write down, right, then what happened here is this is the number, the 98 is the total, so 98 when you divide by 32, so this is how you get to this answer. Okay, so if you want to just write down, you can just write down this is by 98 divided by 2. Oh, sorry, divide by 32. Okay, so this is like the total, the total, the total of your data. If let's say you are using a formula, then it will be multiplied, then after that you plus them together. Okay, then after that you divide by the total you have, then this is how you get the mean. Then after that, let's try to look at the median. Yeah, so the median is here, so it's 2.5. All right, so as what I mentioned just now, so mode we cannot find in the calculator, so you need to determine by yourself. So mode is basically the score with the highest frequency. So in this case, it's 11 here is the highest, so that's why the score is 2. Okay, so remember, this is the frequency, so that's why your mode is not the frequency. Your mode is the variable that having the highest frequency. So I mean, for example, if let's say you try to list out the score here, right, then you will see 5 1, then you will see 11 2. So that's why you are writing 2 instead of writing 11. Okay, then after that, for the range, so the range is the maximum number minus the minimum number, right? So that's why it's 6 minus 1. So equal to 6 minus 1. So by looking at this, then it's correct lah. Your max number, your minimum number. So it's equal to 5. So IQR is Q3 minus Q1, right? So let's go back to calculator. So Q1, yeah, so Q3 we have 5. Then Q1 we have 2. So that's why 5 minus 2. So we can get 3 here. Okay, so standard deviation. So just go down so you can see it. I'm sorry. So here, so Sx, so we can get 1.61. Okay, so yeah, that's the idea for the univariate data analysis. So yeah, I think what you can try to do is you can always just use some example that you have, or you can just practice yourself for the calculator part. So make sure that you are, I mean, you are familiar with the operation and so on. So you doesn't really need to use the formula to actually answer the question. But as what I said, this is the background information for you, so you would not actually attempt this kind of question in your exam. All right, so yeah, thanks for watching the first video. So now you'll be going into the second video, which is the part where we actually enter into the part where we discuss about the bivariate data.